Fuck Jack.
Good morning, Cordell. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm well.
So I got a couple random thoughts that have been coming in question wise, and I just thought it might be, we have to, number one, we need to expand our glossary sheet in the section of the course that we have. But it's a simple construction terms that I completely overlooked as far as what we included to begin with. And one of them came, I'm going to give you a couple words to go on. I'm just going to throw them at you. And I've kind of lumped them because to me, they mean the same thing, but I'm going to let you go. The first one is camber and crown.
So, sorry.
And why they're important in renovations, things like that. How about that?
So, typically crown, I'm referring to, you're talking about curvature, correct? Not crown.
Well, correct. Well, camber. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Didn't even think about that. Didn't even think about it from a trim application. When I lumped camber and crown together, right? Then thanks for throwing a twist in my story.
So first,
it is early, right?
So first, to address crown molding, we would just typically throw the word crown around. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about
a structural element.
Structural element. So typically when we're using crown, at least in my world, we're talking about stud materials types or framing materials. And the best way to describe a crown is like an arc across the edge of something, I would say. Essentially in lieu where a bow would be, if you laid it flat, it would be lifted.
Hey, I haven't gotten to bow yet. I'm going to talk about bow.
Okay. A crown is just an arc across the edge of something. So in my world, when we crown studs, you're holding a stud, you're looking down the length of it, and the bow, the curve is in the thin side of it. How's that?
Yeah. So like if you can't see my picture because it's on a stupid green screen. So I would say crown or camber is like this. So camber would be, to me, is like it's like a pre-built in crown in a structural element like a beam to allow for the deflection to push something flat. Crown, like you're saying, is a stud. And to me, whether you crown them in or crown them out when you're building a wall, it's important to crown them all the same direction because you wouldn't want competing elements. I can't bend my hand that way, like this. If you can imagine going down a wall, one's crown one way, one's crown the other. Imagine putting sheetrock to that. It's kind of like a push me pull you. It's you're bound to have screw poppage.
Do you have a preference on crown in, crown out?
In walls?
Yeah,
I crown out.
Exterior walls.
Meaning crown to the exterior, like exterior elements. I've just always crowned out. I mean, when I'm framing something for a kitchen or a bathroom where there's cabinets, I tend to fish for the straightest studs I can find and still crown out. I mean, all studs effectively, you can say they're straight, but you can eyeball them. And of course, so I've been asked, when do you pitch them? Meaning cut them up for blocks or something. Like, well, if the crown is too bad, and you have to just, I guess, learn that as you go on. It's like, that one's bananas. It's just too much. So I mean, in an 8-foot wall, I mean, anything more than a 1/4 inch crown, I'd pitch it, cut it up. So yeah, crown and camber are similar in nature when looking at the piece of wood, but camber would be a pre-built crown, and it's intentional to allow for deflection, like a floor system or a roof, a ridge line or something like that, to allow for that settling to occur, to bring it back to flate versus having a dip. Which brings us to the next word that you started to allude to, was bow. And I'm not talking about a fancy bow tie. I'm talking about bow in a piece of wood. Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's in where we're talking crown is along the edge of a board. Bow would be along the flat surface of it. So if you, like in a stud, you laid that stud flat on the ground, there would be a rise.
Kind of like a toboggan. It would. Yeah. And think about, to me, bows aren't a big deal because you can just kind of pull them straight and put your sheeting on them and things like that.
Framing, so, yeah, you can manipulate those a lot, but uh, where was I going with that?
I have no idea. I know it's early, but come on, man.
Yes. But yeah, they're not nearly as difficult to deal with as far. I don't really pick through bows much.
Yeah.
Framing.
Okay. Yeah. So bow and crown bow is the easier one to deal with.
Yes.
I mean, there are ways to fix crown, like you can cut a notch in a stud, drive a screw in it. You can do things like that, but that's like a how-to video, which is not what we're trying to get into. You can how-to video. We'll probably get into that later.
Yeah.
Anyway. So here, okay, and then the next, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
The next group of terms to me are all the same thing again, but it's been the one that was thrown at me was the word proud. And so I'm gonna throw 3 words at you: proud, flush, or recessed. And to me, they are all a grouping of the same meaning, but I can understand why it's confusing.
Yeah. So did you throw proud out to someone else, or did they?
So, no, somebody asked me what proud meant.
Oh.
And I had a very, they're like, oh, and I'm like, well, it's the same thing. They go, what about recessed? I'm like, well,
it's funny to me when you say it's proud, because I know exactly what you're talking about, but then I never even think about, sorry, I have a dog invading me. Sit down. Is one surface sticks like protrudes beyond the other one. But I guess if you're familiar with all of these, proud does seem a little different. I just never think of it because it's just pretty easy when you walk up and you feel a couple, you're like, oh, that one's proud.
Right.
But yeah, it's just where one protrudes beyond the other one or beyond the plane surface.
Yeah, or no different than a sheetrock screw not being not being embedded all the way. If you're running your trowel across it and you hear a tick, that tink,
yeah,
the screw is proud. It's anything that's raised over the surface that you want. So
mine went to tile setting right away. Was, when you start feeling your tile, I would say all the time, oh, this one's proud. This one, yeah.
Right. Well, so it was funny because then it was like, what's the difference between proud and recessed? I'm like, well, nothing really, because if it's recessed, which is the baseline one, that means the other one is proud. So the idea is to have them all flush, which is another word for smooth. And
I would say too, recessed for me typically is like an intentional type of setting, I guess. When I would tell someone I want something recessed, like I want this one recessed 3/8 of an inch. So
gotcha.
I guess I get what you're saying is one is equal opposite type of setup, but usually it's referred to some sort of finished plane surface where we've been running this line the whole time, recess one, proud the other.
It was 2 specific questions. One was on tile, one was like on laminate and with an edge. And I said, well, if you take your fingernails and drag them across your laminate and you catch the edge with your fingernails, your edge is proud.
Yes.
Likewise, your surface, by definition, not like you're using the word intentionally recessed. I was trying to give them this, like, well, just to understand they're all interchangeable words in my head, because if it's not flush, it's not good.
Yeah.
And tile, like you said, a recess would be like a niche. That would be an intentional recess, where if you're on a flat surface on a floor and you see one that's irregular or a different elevation, that's not intentional. You're not going to have a recessed tiled floor.
Yes, no, that's not. We try to avoid those.
Yeah. Don't want to stub your toe. I just thought that was really interesting. The word proud is the one that made me realize it's like, as simple of a word as that is, I could say it to you and we know exactly what we're talking about. But when somebody, you say something's proud, they look at you, with the crooked head dog thing. It's like, what? So.
I had one, and I threw a bid out at a homeowner, and I guess and I think we maybe said it before the other day, but this was not course related, but in my regular job, I threw a bid out to a person, sent them a bunch of information, and something was listed as I think it was all fixtures or all finishes FBO. And I didn't do a good job of describing that. So someone might run across this term in a bid or a proposal. And basically all that means is furnished by owner, fixtures by owner, I have a couple people that, refer to the other ones. What it means is you're supplying stuff,
Right.
not, FBO, whatever material FBO is, that is not included in my bid, you are providing.
It also means I'm not your designer or your selector. And that's not to be rude. It's not a rude thing. It's,
I don't know what you want.
yeah, I tell you, it's funny. I'm on my other, gig where I'm building stuff. They ask, what do I think? And I go, well, I think if you like it, I love it. And honestly, and it's like, I'm not a mind reader. I'm happy to work with you on, like I was building some closet stuff and like, well, what do you think about this? I'm like, it's like, I don't have an opinion on this. If it was my closet, no, I wouldn't do that. But if you want it, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just,
Yeah. And my opinion and your opinion don't have to line up.
right.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I'm
Thank you.
happy to build what you would like me to build. I just would like an answer. So yeah, no, I like the FBO. It's because I got a lot of that going on as well. It's like, I'm not going to chase handhold you at the lights. If you want that, there's a designer for that.
Yeah. And if you come across it and it says FBO, now you know what people are talking about. You don't got to ask.
Right.
No one likes to ask questions.
That's a good one. Furnished by owner. That's a good. So proud and FBO are the two big takeaways. So we'll expand our glossary as we go on, as these questions come in, because it's like a non-brainer to us to have this conversation, and it's like, oh, that's okay.
We've had these types of conversations before, and it's like, what kind of terms would throw people off? And I'm like,
I just thought of one. Yeah, I just thought of another one. An abbreviation on a plan, which I just answered this question yesterday, as a matter of fact. It's like, what does AFF mean? And it's like, oh,
above finished floor. Right.
Above finished floor. I mean, please don't. I mean, it's like they can put all kinds of notes on there to be verified by contractor. They can spell them all out, but for some reason they use acronyms in some places or abbreviations. So above finished floor is nothing more than being that's where it's at on the wall when you're done.
I got one that I hadn't seen ever, and it was WSH, welded stud head.
Oh, I saw that once 100 years ago. I built this crazy, very contemporary modern home, and it had a big moment frame, but it was all steel. Mm-hmm. And moment framing meaning it's a structural steel element that was probably 30 feet high, if I recall.
In lieu of shear panel.
And then the liners of this thing had the welded stud heads to put a wood liner to it. So it just had all these things every 2 feet where you'd lay it out, drill a hole, and bolt this piece of wood inside there. So we had something to nail to.
Yeah, this was for a big wet set bracket. And but I was looking at it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, I give up. I got to email him. I don't know what. Yeah. And it wasn't pointed, it was just this huge bracket. And it just says WSH. I'm like, what is this? And I emailed the architect. She goes, yeah, that's the engineer's notes. I'll have to email her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, that's good.
Yes. All right. I feel better.
Yeah, that's cool. Cool. Well, that's our glossary lesson for the day.
Perfect. Any other things?
Not this week. I guess we'll cover the glossary, and then we'll see what kind of questions pour in this week.
All right. Have a good one.
Thanks, sir. Mm-hmm.